Ground idle is controlled to 50% N2, but depending on environmental conditions, it may be between 49 and 54%. To guarantee engine acceleration, minimum flight idle is 60% N2. To ensure that sufficient air is still available to provide air conditioning when bleed demands are placed on the engine, a minimum N2 must be determined for all bleed conditions at all altitudes. This is known as the N2 floor schedule and is automatically provided by FADEC. The minimum N2 in flight with engine NTI selected on is 67%, but reduces to 60% below 200 feet radio altitude. Thrust modulation. Selecting the TRP on raises the thrust control system to the thrust modulation level and provides a link between the flight guidance system and FADEC. The FADEC now has a limited control authority as demanded by the flight guidance system and provides limitations protection for N1, EGT, and N2 in all modes with the following exceptions. When wind shear is detected, 649 degrees Celsius EGT is allowed rather than the normal takeoff limit of 632 degrees Celsius. Independent of which thrust rating is selected on the TRP, with the auto throttle off, 632 degrees Celsius becomes the FADEC limit. The pilot is responsible for preventing the engines from exceeding the maximum continuous thrust limit of 613 degrees Celsius in MCT or climb thrust ratings. Basic mode. This mode is entered when climb norm or climb max is selected on the TRP. All the N1s are synchronized to the N1 of the master engine, as selected by the master switch on the TRP. If any thrust lever is moved away from the master engine, FADEC will eventually reach the limit of its trim authority and the pilot must advance or retard the thrust lever as indicated by the arrow on the FADEC status panel. A blue arrow indicates the thrust lever should be advanced, and a white arrow it should be retarded. The arrow will extinguish when FADEC authority is regained. Thrust mode. The thrust mode is entered from the basic mode by either selecting level change, climb on the MCP, or selecting any thrust mode on the TRP. When the thrust mode is entered, FADEC will control N1 within its control authority. The blue arrows will again appear when the limit of control authority is reached. The current thrust mode will be displayed in the top left-hand corner of the PFDs. White when the mode is armed and green when it is engaged. The calculated N1 is shown on the N1 set displays on the PEDs, along with the bug settings on the N1 gauges. The following thrust modes are available. Auto throttle. In auto throttle mode, the flight guidance system controls N1 to a thrust schedule by moving the thrust levers using the servo motor instead of commanding the pilots with trim arrows. The auto throttle may be overridden at any time by manually advancing or retarding the thrust levers. Auto throttle speed mode. In the auto throttle speed mode, the auto throttle controls N1 to maintain either Mach or indicators as selected on the MCP. Retard mode is entered after either a selection of level change, during descent, or automatically when radio altitude is below 50 feet. Do it, please. Auto throttle thrust mode. The thrust mode is engaged on takeoff, during a go-around, and during a climb with either takeoff or IAS engaged as the autopilot vertical mode. Engine Life Computer. The Engine Life Computer records certain engine parameters both routinely and when engine limitations are exceeded. Engine parameters may also be stored by use of the Store Data switch. The fail annunciator illuminates either when the unit fails a built-in test or when the memory is greater than 80% full. Click yourself through the external checks. After the battery or batteries have been selected on, the engine fire test must be performed for all 4 engines. Starting with the number 1 engine, when the fire test button on the ground test panel is pressed and held, the following indications should appear. One of the red attention getters should be pressed to cancel the fire bell and the red alert and caution lights. The engine extinguisher used indications are now tested by pressing and holding the engine and APU extinguisher button on the ground test panel. The 8 engine extinguisher used captions illuminate while the test button is pressed. Note that this test also illuminates the APU extinguisher used caption on the APU panel. Do it, please. The 4 fire handles are checked fully in. The center panel is now checked. Each indicator of the oil triple gauges is checked for condition and the contents checked. The FADEC fault and off annunciator should not be illuminated if all the FADECs are functioning normally. The engine vibration system is checked by pressing and holding the vibration test button on the center panel. The engine vibration indicators increase to 2.0 and engine vibration illuminates 2 seconds after the reading has risen above 1.2. When the button is released, the vibration level reduces to 0. Do it, please. The N1 settings, both N1 ref and N1 reduced, dependent on the pressure altitude, temperature, cabin air bleed, and engine anti-ice condition, are calculated before takeoff. With the rotary knob on the TRP selected to temp and a toga button selected to max, rotating the rotary controller by 1 click will display the sensed outside air temperature in the window. If this is different from the reported outside temperature, the reported temperature is entered in the window. The flight guidance system uses the lower of the 2 temperatures to calculate N1 ref. The calculated values are then checked against the values calculated by the TRP with the intended bleed selection for takeoff selected. The following configurations are permitted for takeoff: no bleeds, APU air selected on and packs on. Maximum thrust is available from the engines. Cabin air on, engine air selected on and packs on. Discrete signals from any engine air switch and either pack switch combine to signal this configuration to the TRP.